Hello all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing The Last Samurai, and we are joined by a very special guest, a friend of the pod. Andrew's back, y'all. Andrew, didn't introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Andrew from the Revisionist Almanac. You've probably heard me on a few past episodes of the show. I will tell people this in private. I will tell them publicly. Movies and Us is my favorite podcast out there, and I am so thrilled to be back once again. Thank you for having me.
We've had Andrew on, I was thinking back to this, quite a spectrum of movies. We started with The Princess Bride, then we went to First Reformed, then we went to Lost in Translation, and now we're adding to the mix The Last Samurai. So I feel like our little bucket of goodies is quite diverse.
Yes, we've been all over the map, all over the years.
Yeah, we have. And this one is from 2003, and there's a very specific reason why it's a 2003 movie, and you might have seen a lot of 2003 movies here on our feed. Andrew, do you want to share a little bit about maybe your show and the concept and why we're talking about this 2003 movie?
Sure. So the concept of the show, to kind of put it in like a really small package, is I look back on a specific film year, and I'll have a couple of guests come with me for an episode, and we will watch everything under the sun in that particular year, more movies than you can count. And we will look at everything that won Oscars for picture, director, and the acting awards. We will then, completely aside from whatever was actually nominated and what actually won, we will determine what we think should have won, and we will put our picks against the actual picks on social media votes, and we will let the audience decide what's the true winner that will go into the Almanac. And the three of us, in just a few months now, we've been talking about this and planning this for about a year, it feels like. Yeah. We're going to go into 2003, and we are going to cover everything in that film year.
Yeah, it's going to be juicy. It's going to be so fun. That was quite a year, too, so I think that'll be a fascinating combo. But we're doing our homework now. We're prepping. It's crazy. I think, Andrew, you watch like so many movies in a month to prep for that, just to like absorb yourself into this like moment in time of a year. So we are doing that over many months now to get ready for that episode. So it's very exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for The Last Samurai?
Sure. In 19th century Japan, Nathan Algren, a U.S. Army captain, is hired by the Japanese emperor to train his army against the modern warfare techniques. Captain Algren finds himself trapped in a struggle between two eras and two worlds.
All right. I guess let's do our one-sentence summaries in Movies and Us tradition. So, Andrew, what is yours?
Okay. This is always just the most fascinating part of every episode, because sometimes these come to me really easily and sometimes I've got a mind for them. Yeah. This one came to me during the first watch right away. And we're going to have to unpack what I'm about to say, but here's my one-sentence summary for this film. Dances with Samurai. The last time Tom Cruise wasn't just a stuntman.
Oh, it's so good.
Well done. Oh my gosh.
I was pretty proud. It just popped in my head.
Was this as you were watching, right after? When did the moment of inspiration just strike you?
It was about an hour into the movie, okay. And I thought, this seems like another movie I've watched not too long ago that was also a Best Picture contender.
So good. Sarah, what is your one-sentence summary?
Mine is, what happens when you bring a knife to a gunfight?
Oh, nice. Oh, good. Well done. My one-sentence summary is Ethan Hawke tackles his most impossible mission of all time, fighting modern warfare and capitalism.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's dive in. We're going to leave an opening section here where we don't spoil the movie quite yet. This did come out like over 20 years ago. So we're going to keep this real short, but I'm actually curious to hear with your thoughts about this film. If this is like the first time you've seen it, a multiple rewatch, when the first time you might have watched this is, and if there's anything that's like changed in how you've received this film in this most recent watch. I always find that really fascinating. So, Andrew, I'm curious your thoughts and kind of your relationship to this film.
Okay, so I saw this movie probably a year or two after it came out. So it came
Okay.
out, I would have been a junior in high school, and I don't remember, it wasn't like the movie for me as a teenager. There was other stuff I was into at the time. And then I saw it
For
a couple
sure.
of years after it hit DVD or whatever. I thought it was fine. I had nothing negative to say about it, but it wasn't my favorite movie.
Yeah.
I don't find myself revisiting it often
Mm-hmm.
until this year. And I've now watched it 5 times over the course of this calendar year. Um, yes.
Wow.
So I watched it originally when I did my 2003 prep, which at this point was about 5 months ago, because I've got to stay way ahead on prep. So I'm many months in advance. And
Yeah.
then when you presented this opportunity, I said, oh my gosh, I need to revisit this again. And so I've watched it 4 times in the last 2 weeks just to like really let it kind of wash over me. All right.
Wow.
I didn't do this for the Lost in Translation episode, but I'm going to do it now. I tried to save some of my stuff for that one for when we get together for 2003.
Okay.
I'm not going to nominate this movie for anything when we get to 2003. It's not that
Okay.
I think this is a bad movie.
Yeah.
I just, of the 41 movies I watched in 2003 prep, I have this at number 19. So I think it's kind of like
Oh.
a right in the middle movie for that year. And there's some things I
Ah.
like about it, but it's just not like the cream of the crop for me.
Okay. Wow. 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 You have soaked in this over the past 2 weeks. Lived in this world.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay. Well, I'm curious to hear what worked, what didn't work. It sounds like it's a little bit of mixed mag for you. So that'll be fascinating to hear. Sarah, relationship to the Last Samurai, and then kind of overall thoughts about this film. Temp check.
Yeah, this is the first time I've watched this movie. This is not a Sarah movie, and
Nope.
honestly,
Not at all.
with the title of The Last Samurai, knowing that the protagonist is Tom Cruise, a white man, I was like, I'm not watching this movie. I'm not interested in this movie. But 2003, here we are, required homework. So honestly, I was expecting the worst from this. My expectations were on the floor. So it was better than I thought it was going to be. I still don't think it's a great movie. I think that there are parts of it that are great, like Ken Watanabe, who is incredible
Oh,
in everything, but he's very good in this. So there are some things in this that are quite good. I think there's a lot in this that I don't think works as well, but again, my expectations were on the floor, so compared to what I thought this was going to be, it's a much better movie, but kind of a mixed bag, kind of in the middle, enjoyable enough, way too long. But yeah, anything with Ken Watanabe was great, though. I was just like, keep bringing him back on the screen. That's really what I want to watch here.
I feel like we still didn't get enough of him too. I'm like, he's got so much more to give. Like, you just put the camera on him. My gosh. Okay, well, before we dive in and talk about this movie, I have to say, even though we're not dying on the battlefield, I have to say I love this. Our conversations, guys. Quite the like final parting words before someone like enters the second life. I This is my first watch as well. I'd heard about this movie, known about this movie, just never, I mean, there's a million other things to watch, so never got around to it. I have to say, I love me a big sweeping epic. So the beginning of this film, I was like, oh my gosh, am I gonna love this movie? Because it's gonna just like tug on my heartstrings in all the right way. I think the beginning section, I'm like, okay, maybe there's something here. Middle section, real wandering, real rough. I think there's a lot that could be so much stronger about that. There's some things that are a little problematic too. The ending, the final battle sequence, I have to say, I think that's where this movie is like shining in its greatest form. Just the visual, the spectacle, it's serving what I think people came to this movie for. So I think a lot of that worked really well for me. So it's kind of like an Oreo, maybe, for me, is how I feel about this film. On the whole, I think there's a lot that hasn't aged well. So I had that lens really strongly while watching this film of like, how were 2003 audiences receiving this versus now that we have a lot more awareness of some of these dynamics? Some of these dynamics, I think, maybe not working as well. And then I have a whole thing around like getting stuck on just the Tom Cruise-ness of it all. And I think like if they were to just replace him with another male star, I think it's going to have been just like a much stronger movie. So, yeah, I think that I was really distracted by throughout the entire film. Could not unsee it, and I think that affected the viewing experience as well.
Sounds like we're all kind of right in the same boat, more or less.
Yeah, yeah. Like there's something else worked well, and then there's something that could be better. I think it's really funny though that Sarah, your expectations were on the ground, and
On the
maybe we are
floor,
like
yeah.
a foot above the ground, and that's a win for you in
Yeah,
your books.
exactly. Hey, exceeded expectations.
You
The
know?
expectations were very low, but it exceeded them, which is something.
Yeah.
Well, and what's funny is, so I had already done all the prep by the time that you two had reached out to me about doing this episode. So I already had my ranking of all my movies.
Oh, yeah.
And when Sarah was like, "Hey, do you want to do The Last Samurai?" I almost like fell over. I was like, of all the movies to choose, but you know what? I was like, there's actually enough here that we do need to talk about. And
Yeah.
so I was like, I'll put myself through 10 hours of watching this 4 more times just for the two of you. That's how dedicated I am to the and us experience.
Oh, I love it. Well, I have to ask, as you went to like time number 4 and 5, like this does the law of diminishing return really apply to this movie? I would imagine it might be so. Some movies gets deeper and more rich with more watches. This one, how was that? Like the fifth viewing experience. How was
The
that for
more
you?
I watched it, the more I checked out. And
Mm.
this is the type of movie that will put me to sleep at 10 a.m. in the morning. It's just it there are parts of it where my eyelids just instinctually start closing
Yeah.
because it's kind of so neutral. Like there's nothing like incredibly offensive about it. There's some
Yes.
elements to it that I don't love, but it's just kind of so mediocre that it's
Yep.
not like igniting me in any way. Like bad movies I can enjoy and laugh at, and good movies obviously I'm really into, but this movie's just in that sweet spot of it's so mediocre that my brain just kind of like drifts to anything else to get my attention.
You're like running through the grocery
Yeah.
list, you list items. What time do I need to leave today?
Start folding laundry for the kids, things like that. Just anything to occupy my mind other than
Oh.
Tom Cruise wandering around Japanese countrysides.
Yeah, and looking longingly into the distance at, yeah. Okay, well, let's give a spoiler alert. Let's dive into this film. I think there's actually a lot of interesting choices that this film makes that we can talk about, especially from a screenplay perspective, especially from like a depicting of different cultures perspective. I think there's a lot here actually that like you were saying, Andrew, is worth being able to discuss at length. So I'm curious, what were some of those big choices this film makes that either helps it more than you expected, in your case, Sarah, or maybe some like, this could have been just so much stronger if you didn't make this choice. I'll let you choose which direction you want to go in.
Let's see. So there's so much to unpack here.
Yeah.
As I was watching this multiple times, I kept thinking, and you two do obviously the TV and us side of things, and you have talked about Shogun, which is a recent TV series from last year, which I think really captures an authentic experience of that time period, and it's true to the culture and representative of everything, and I think is an almost perfect season of television.
Yeah.
And watching this movie, I just kept thinking, I wish there was an Asian voice in the director's chair giving this a more authentic experience like a Shogun. I just wish it was more representative of that than 20 years ago. It was very much a white man's experience, a white savior element to this film. And so that was my big takeaway, was this movie feels like sort of that prototypical white savior experience still. And it was just kind of grated on my nerves a lot.
Yeah, I also kept thinking about Shogun while watching. The whole time I was just like, why am I watching this and not watching Shogun? Like, I can just watch that again because that is great. And I was actually telling a friend after it was over, I was like, it's like Shogun, but worse and made in 2003. Like, that was my summation of this film. Man, it's just such a bummer that I don't know. I'm just going to go watch Shogun now and then I'll be happy and I won't have to think about Tom Cruise, just the Tom Cruise of it all again. But I I honestly was expecting more of the white saviorism than there actually is in this film. Like, I'm telling you, when I say my expectations were on the floor, they were on the floor. I had no
Yeah.
hope in this film doing anything even remotely honoring to Japanese culture. Like, I thought this was going to be a whole train wreck. And so I expected more of the like Tom Cruise swooping in to save the day because he's Tom Cruise and he's our action figure and he's our only hero. And there's a little bit more complication in that. Obviously, he is the hero, but I truly expected it to be worse. So I was like, oh, okay, there's a little bit more of a something here than I expected, especially given that it was 2003. So again, expectations on the floor. Sometimes even a mediocre movie you'll be pleasantly surprised by.
And what's crazy is I remember when this came out in 2003, the marketing campaign was very much misleading you to think Tom Cruise was quote unquote the last samurai, because they knew that Tom Cruise was a bankable star that they could get people, and it did really well at the box office. And for
Yeah.
people were obviously in spoiler territories, for people who have seen the movie, I do like that the movie immediately starts with Ken Watanabe's character, and it sort of
Yeah.
subverts expectation in terms of actually letting it establishes very quickly he is indeed the last samurai. And so I at least appreciated the actual direction choice to start the film with Watanabe and then hard cut over to Tom Cruise. And so there's a little bit of a, to Sarah's point, there's a little bit of this movie walks a better line than some of its predecessors in terms of that white savior narrative, even though it's still there.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I think there's choices that they could have made that would have at least moved them a little bit more away from that territory, even if not fully like uh sensitive to the cultures. The thing that really irks me is in the final battle sequences, it's Tom Cruise encouraging Ken Watanabe's character Katsumoto to continue on, to continue fighting. And I'm like, we don't need your encouragement, my dude. You know what I mean? Like, I think that dynamic is what I think was like the biggest problem, because for the middle section, we do see it's not great, but like Tom Cruise is learning the culture, and he is respecting and understanding and kind of being opened up to widening his lenses. But it's in the final sequence where I'm like, no, it should be, it's just, this is not right. This should not be this dynamic. I think it's actually the reverse of this team fighting for what they believe in, and Tom Cruise gets to be a part of it. Like, you get to be a part of it instead of you are the encourager, you are the inspirer for them to continue fighting for their honor and legacy. So I think every time Tom Cruise is encouraging Katsumoto, I'm just like, oh, I don't know. I don't
It's
like
like
this.
it's like they smashed two films together and tried
Yeah.
to make something cohesive, because I do think there's an interesting narrative to be told of a character coming from the perspective of Tom Cruise's character dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yeah.
alcoholism. Like there's something there that can be explored. It's just not necessarily congruent with what's happening in Japan. And like they're smushing two things together that don't necessarily fit. Square peg round hole kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and the other piece that I loved about Shogun, this is not an episode about Shogun, but I'm going to talk about it as much as I can work it in, is in that show, obviously there's, these battles going on and we have lots of action in the show that's very well done. But the coolest part of Shogun to me is all of the political stuff
Yeah.
that was going on and watching all of the maneuvering between all of these characters. And it was so fascinating to watch that piece of it. And so that's all happening in The Last Samurai. We just don't get to see it. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I really would have loved to have seen a little bit more of that and that kind of strategy going on between these different groups and like how they're working. That would be a very Sarah movie, which The Last Samurai is not. So maybe that's me trying to make this movie into something that's less like popularly, accessible and more like me coded. But I love that because you can see that there's strategy happening between these two sides. They have their different plans, but we don't see how those two things ever coincide. And I think that might have been interesting and might even like ramp up some of the tension too, if we see some of those political maneuverings that are then informing what's happening on the battlefield.
I would have loved to see Tom Cruise be a mole. Like, I think that would be so interesting. And also, him uniquely adding value to the samurai class of society that is fighting for something, but he's got an understanding of how the British general or like the Imperial Army has been trained and kind of expecting and anticipating what their moves are going to be and being able to say, like, we need to like change our plans to adapt to theirs. But like he's got that value, that kind of missing piece of the puzzle that I can bring to the table instead of him like corralling the team and encouraging Matsumoto because he don't need your encouragement. I think that would have been a really interesting way for him to uniquely add as an ally to this team. Things that they wouldn't have had without him there, and I think that would have been fascinating. And some of that's in there too. Like they set up for that a little bit when Matsumoto's like telling him in the middle part of the movie, like, I want to study my enemy, like I want to know how your side thinks. So I think if they played that up a little bit more, it would have been fun and juicy and entertaining. We love to see a mole, but also would have added and maybe like kept them away from some of the like really kind of problematic dynamics that we see at the ending.
And I don't know if either of the two of you have seen or are familiar with Dances with Wolves, which famously won Best Picture in 1990. It was impossible for me to watch this movie and not see Dances with Wolves all over it. I mean, it's more or less a cut and paste kind of story about a lone American soldier who's kind of isolated, who gets taken by some quote unquote foreigners and then sort of integrates into their society, falls in love with a member of their group, fights against the evil American. Like there's just so much of it that's almost identical that it was really hard to not look past that and be like, are they just trying to replicate Dances with Wolves but in Japan? Because that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Honestly, they wanted another Oscar, so like, hey, this worked a couple years ago, like let's do it again.
Yeah,
it felt that way for sure.
Yeah, I think the other aspect that I think makes this more problematic, while we're on the topic of things that are problematic, is how the backstory of Tom Cruise's character as being one that fought against the Native Americans, and that being like a whole backstory line for him. And there's this like comparison slash like redemption arc for him around him joining the samurai, being a way that he's also healing maybe the guilt that he's experienced from those past things. Like I found that hard in the especially opening section to like invest in this character who's like replaying a lot of the atrocities that he's committed against like the native indigenous people. And I'm like, I think I'm supposed to be rooting for you, but I don't really like you that much right now, And I think that dynamic, I wonder, in a 2003 context versus now, where over the past 2 decades we've had a lot more awareness and sensitivity to and respect and honor in uncovering these parts of our history. And I don't know, I feel like it's kind of used as this like emotional trigger for us to like kind of buy into him as a character. I'm like, I think this is not working the way that you intended it to work. So I think that's an interesting aspect of this as well, is kind of almost showcasing these two people groups that are not as technology savvy and progressive compared to modern capitalist warfare, and him almost finding hope and redemption and cleansing the sins of his past by fighting with the people that he was previously oppressing in his previous chapters of life. I don't know. There's something about that feels a little funky to me too, which I was a little bit sensitive to.
I was trying to kind of read up on this just to see like what other perspectives were. And I found an interesting quote from Ken Watanabe, who actually disagreed with the idea of this being a white savior narrative, which I thought was interesting. So I wanted to hear what he had to say. And he said, quote unquote, before this movie, there was the stereotype of Asian people with glasses, buck teeth, a camera. After this film came out, Hollywood tried to be more authentic when it came to Asian stories. Mm-hmm. And while I do think I understand his sentiment there, I immediately was thinking, well, this movie comes on the heels of, for me, a far superior, more critically acclaimed film of Asian origin, which is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which was up for like 10 Oscars that year, and is a phenomenal film, and I think really does capture an authentic Asian experience. And so I'm thinking, I mean, sure, maybe this moved the ball a little bit further, possibly, but it's not like it's this groundbreaking centerpiece of like pushing Asian actors into a better spot. I think other movies had led us down a certain path, and maybe this is just another footstep. But I kind of disagreed with Watanabe's stance that this fundamentally changed the way Hollywood viewed Asian actors or portrayals of.
Yeah, totally agree. And I feel like the key is that I think the film seems to like walk up to the glass of being able to look at Asian culture without actually going into it. And I think maybe that's the difference between the two films. Because oh my gosh, I think it's an amazing film. Anyone who hasn't go seen it yet, go see it. It's steeped in it and soaked in it, and it's just so beautiful. But this film almost uses some of those components to create spectacle without actually going a little bit deeper to uncover the heart and the root of it. A perfect example is the samurai in the kind of opening first act, that does like is a traitor, I guess, to his samurai roots and is training the imperial army. When he commits that ceremony of seppuku around taking his own life as a source of honor, I thought that's actually such an important scene to the understanding this whole film, I think, because it showcases that the samurai class, even though this man has betrayed them to train the rebellion against to crush them, they still have allowed, because of where he comes from and because of who he is, this honor that they're bestowing upon him, this like gift to him that maybe they don't feel like he deserves, but like out of honor, they will still maintain and commit to that. And I think like that whole backstory of what that ceremony means to this culture, I think, is so vital to everything we see. Even making that climactic ending sequence with Ken Watanabe's death feel even more meaningful. There's more emotional stakes there if they just take like a couple minutes to walk through a little bit of that and a little bit more. And I think as a viewer that maybe doesn't have a context for what that ceremony means and how much honor is placed on that and how significant that is in this culture, it might just be a scene that you move through. But just a little bit more effort to showcase and kind of unveil that a little bit more, I think would have added, honestly, to the film's emotional core even. So I think it's a win for them too. But I think there's a lot of moments like that where it's like, they start talking about it a little bit and then they kind of back away and just move on to the next big spectacle. So that lack of interest, I think, to go a little bit deeper is probably part of what feels different between those two films, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I kept kind of thinking about this, especially in that middle section where Tom Cruise is just kind of like palling around the town. It you do feel that like distance, and it's almost like because we're kind of watching this through his eyes, it's almost this like this distant ideal, that this community that he is now part of is this like perfect ideal that's different than everything that he's come from. So it's this weird, like, I don't know, like fetishizing the other kind of vibes that I got in the middle of this film. And I was like, okay, like you're trying to do a very nice thing, which is showing, Japanese culture and all of these things that they give, the samurai and all of their honor and their precision and their dedication and how they care for one another, like all great things. But it's almost viewed through this like kind of, I don't know, this kind of gross lens that I was struggling to kind of like put my finger on while I was watching, but like something about that just wasn't sitting right with me. And I think it's because we are seeing this through the white man's lens instead of it being a more, authentic cultural experience to the people who are actually living there. So I don't know, that part, in addition to being meandering and quite long, I was like, there's something a little grody in this that I'm not super enjoying.
It's like a surface level romanticization
Yes.
of the experience. And this movie's so close to almost having the potential to meet the mark because you cast Ken Watanabe, who's an iconic actor, and you've got Hiroyuki Sanada. It's like you have the potential. There's so much great stuff in this movie, and you just don't really explore what needs to be explored. You spend way too much time with Tom Cruise trying to like want to drink sake. Like I don't need to hear him yelling about sake. I could do with a lot less of the alcoholic withdrawal stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, they have these two incredible actors that I think are just stars and like light up the screen. Like, ha- the other thing is, I think he doesn't talk to anyone except for Ken Watanabe and just yells at him, in the scenes where he's like, "Why do you have me here?" And then he just kind of like pals around. Like, he is not engaging, or we're not seeing him engaging with anybody else in this village. He talks to the little kids, I think, a couple times, to, like ask how to say things, but I think that also makes it feel less earned when, like, guys, I was so mad when Taka and the children let him wear their father's armor. I was like, oh, heck no, you do not deserve this, my dude. Like, I think that is also just like too much of a big leap to make of him inhabiting the most honorable part of his father, and also was the thing that their father wore when this man killed him and murdered him. Like I just, those emotional leaps like went far beyond down the path that I was emotionally ready for. Her apology, too fast. Like, he did his duty, you did your duty, it's okay, I accept your apology. Too fast, too fast. I wanted her to like walk away, and he initially apologizes for him. So I think like those moments don't feel earned, and so I think by the end when we get to him like joining and feeling like he has one with them, I'm like, well, we haven't really talked to anyone, we haven't seen you like wrestle with us a little bit, you just kind of yelled at some people and then trained with some people, and that's about it. So
there's one scene where he's like, there's one scene where he's teaching them to play baseball, which is so cliche, and I'm like, I was eye rolling at that. I'm like, what are we doing? I've seen this in every movie where there's an American going to another country and teaching them this sport. And when he puts on the armor, as I was watching it the fifth and final time, I wrote a little note that said, because I think he's 41, Tom Cruise, in real life when this movie comes out, and I'm only a couple years away from that. And I said, if you catch me in samurai armor, you will know I've reached my midlife crisis, because that's how I felt seeing him in the armor. So for anyone out there, if you see me in samurai armor, you might want to do a wellness check on me.
I'm dead. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Then he like struts out there, feels so great. So good.
Yeah, you could, there was definitely some Tom Cruise personal stuff seeping through the screen, because for anyone who knows his personal life, he was going through some things at that point in his career, in his life.
Yep. Okay, can we talk about the Tom Cruise-ness of it all? Because I think that actually a thing that would help this movie just significantly is just to cast somebody else. He's such an iconic star, and I think when you are at this point in your career and like you have such a distinct style, a distinct like character that you often are playing, it's hard to unsee that, let alone to believe that you are really like going through this transformative experience in another culture. I think it's like hard to just unsee. He just looks so out of place. And I think there's like especially in the first act, there's a grittiness in the story and what he's like, all the like post-traumatic stress and the like the pain that he's enduring, that I'm like, I don't think Tom Cruise is the right dude to play this, to play the grit. He's not giving enough grit. It's not Tom Cruise's like brand to be giving grit. And so just honestly, I was like, even Brad Pitt would be better in this role. Just like some hunky American looking man who can like do a little bit more angst than Tom Cruise can, I think would have honestly made this movie a much stronger experience if you just cast anybody else. I think Tom Hardy would have been fascinating. There's almost this man without many words, but observing and taking in so much and really noticing. I think that could be an interesting. He also can just do angst really well. So that would be great. In the beginning section and then that middle section where he's just like observing and taking things in, I think would have helped him, us maybe believe a little bit like, oh, he's observing and taking in this culture with intention and detail, which then maybe we could buy in a little bit more. But
I don't mean
other
to
submissions.
I don't mean to derail us again into Shogun territory, but I will.
I love it.
Every time I was watching this movie, I thought Cosmo Jarvis would have been ideal. I'm such a big fan of his. He's done a lot of really good work, and he's sort of evolving to the next level. And he reminds me a lot of Tom Hardy, where he's got this brooding nature about him. And I thought Cosmo Jarvis in this role would have been infinitely more interesting, more complex. Obviously, Tom Cruise was in this was a weird pocket for Cruise because he's clearly going for an Oscar at this point in time. If you look at his career, because he's coming off Magnolia, Eyes Wide Shut, he's done Vanilla Sky, Minority Report. He's very much in this pocket where he's going for the Oscar. He doesn't get it over the next couple of years, and then he decides, now I'm just making Mission Impossible movies until I die, more or less. And this movie really like summed up. He really wants that Oscar. He was clinging to it, and he was doing everything he could, and it was distracting. It's interesting that you bring up Brad Pitt, because I was also thinking as I was watching this movie, are Cruise and Brad Pitt the last two quote unquote movie stars left in this world that where like it feels like their name sort of drives a box office more or less regardless of what the movie is, because this movie did 450 million I think in 2003. Yeah. I just thought it's interesting that Cruise and Pitt have sort of been the last two remaining box office draws. And I also, just from a personal level, I've never really explored this on a podcast, but it's so hard for me to rectify my feelings about Cruise and Pitt specifically, because they're two integral parts of my journey through like loving film, because all the movies they were in I loved, and yet now for personal reasons through different things that have gone on with them, I have a hard time wanting to root for Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt, because it just feels like these guys who have really strong PR firms behind them, and if you know the sordid details of their past, it's hard for me to buy into them being like good guys. So there's a lot to wrestle with in my own emotions with these gentlemen.
Yeah, and it's a shame that honestly their pull is undeniable. Like, I mean, even while we're recording this now, like F1 just making bank, the pull is crazy, and it probably is like capturing, just like able to capture like multi-generational pull too. Like those of us that grew up and there's something nostalgic about watching them. I just talked to a friend who saw F1, and her comments are just like, oh, it's kind of nostalgic seeing Brad Pitt do Brad Pitt on this big screen again. Like my inner like 14-year-old self is just like like loving it, eating it up. But like for the older generation too, like these were the movies they were going to, and so that multi-generational pull, the stardom power. I wonder if there's any that would be up there with them.
All I could think was Chalamet's maybe the one guy, the one male figure out there who feels like he's about to ascend to
that.
If Chalamet's in a movie, people will go see it. But I don't know if there's a whole lot of people that their name on a poster is going to drive people to the box office.
Yeah.
So the other person that I kept thinking about while watching this was, it's a weird left turn, but is Denzel Washington. Because I was watching this movie and I was going, okay, the Tom Cruise of it all, you are Tom Cruise. I can't see anything other than Tom Cruise. Denzel is another actor like that. But Denzel is so good in everything he does. He just like oozes charisma. And so I don't care what he's doing. He's fantastic. And I will go watch a Denzel movie. I don't care what it is. And so I was like, okay, even like a Denzel in this role would have been so cool, because at least he would have been charismatic. He would be having fun. Even if there's problematic stuff going on, we could enjoy watching Denzel do something like this. Whereas I feel like Tom Cruise, he doesn't have that same sort of like magnetism on the screen. He's Tom Cruise, and he can act. We've seen it happen, but we don't have to see it all the time. And I feel like that's kind of what we get in this, is just like, oh, Tom Cruise is there, as opposed to somebody that really has that like gravitas on the screen that you can be like, even if it's a crappy movie, I'm enjoying watching this person. So let's go.
Yeah, Denzel for me is, there were sort of three. It was Pitt, Cruise, and then Denzel was my third, like last remaining movie star where he still moves the needle enough, whether it's an Equalizer movie or I feel like a lot of people went to see Gladiator 2 because they knew Denzel was in it. Definitely the best part of said film.
Oh, yes. We just want to watch Denzel play dress up and just like pal around and strut around, like whether it's in a gladiator costume, whether it's in a samurai suit, whatever it is.
He's the main reason I'm tempted to see the new Spike Lee movie, which I don't think is going to be a particularly great remake of a really wonderful Kurosawa film. But I'm like, Denzel signed up though. Like, so Denzel's in it. It's at least going to be interesting, or he's going to be interesting.
The way I also just like trust his judgment, even if the movie ends up being terrible, I'm like, well, he must have had a good reason to do this. Whether it turned out is not his fault, okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
he
so
did
funny.
his part. We can trust him to always bring it in his part. There's a lot that he can't control, but the part that he can, it's going to be
Oh, he
amazing.
nails. Yeah.
And let's
Yeah.
something else on the Tom Cruise of it all, where we're talking about Pitt or we're talking about Denzel, for example. I buy them being the type of leading men
Yeah.
that women would want to have a relationship with. Every time I see Tom Cruise in a movie when he's got a romantic relationship, I don't buy it at all. There's a weirdness about Tom Cruise where I don't think I've ever seen him in a film where I'm like, yeah, I believe that woman would be attracted to what he's given off. I don't know. There's an awkwardness around Tom Cruise that
Yeah. That's
doesn't
so funny.
translate.
It's so true. Well, this movie indulges too much in the like longing glances from Tom Cruise. I'm like, ew, none of us want to see that. None of us want to see. He's like looking at her like he wants to eat her. Like, no. He also rudely interrupts her pleasant, peaceful bath sequence where I'm like, that's creepy. Who let you walk all the way up the hill? You know what I mean? There's just, yeah, there's a weird, like, I don't know. It's not great. I hated that whole storyline. No surprise to anyone, I suppose, but that was not good. Okay, what are some things that worked well in this film? Things that you felt like. Let's start with you, Sarah. I think this is going to be a fun little exercise to try and come up with something that worked better.
No,
And
I
you
do have
expected.
I have some positives. We've already
Okay.
talked about Ken Watanabe. He is my number one positive.
Yes.
He's amazing. He's amazing in this. Yes. My other positive that I absolutely loved, and Andrew, you already mentioned him, but Hiroyuki Sanada, fantastic in everything he does. Go watch Shogun. He's also fantastic in that. But I loved every time he would come on screen. He has such energy and presence to him, and like you feel the wrath that he has toward this white man
Oh,
who just messed up everything. And I loved it. And I was rooting for him. And I was like, yes, you beat him with that stick. Like, I don't even care. I know we're supposed to be rooting for Tom Cruise. I am not. I am rooting for Hiroyuki Sanada 100%. So I loved every time he was on screen. I was so sad when he died in the end. He had to because he is a samurai. Hello, that's where we were going. But
yeah.
man, he brought it in every single scene, and I wanted him to have more screen time because he's incredible, which we all knew. But it was just nice to see it in this movie.
Yeah, and so even though I prefaced earlier by saying I'm not going to give this movie any revisions when we get to 2003 on my show, I don't want to slight Watanabe at all. He's number 7 for me of all the gentlemen in the supporting actor category when we talk about that in a couple of months.
Mhm.
I just didn't think that this movie should be rewarded with a nomination or that it gave him enough opportunity.
Yes.
He should be higher, but the movie doesn't accentuate what he does well enough. And so as much as I love him, I couldn't do that. And this is also a weird movie for me where if you like people, it always surprises me that people pay attention to my letterbox, which is very nice of them. But sometimes I will log something and 5 minutes later, somebody's like, "Hey, Andrew, wow, you just watched X, Y, and Z. What do you have to say about it?" And it always comes up when I give a movie a 3.5 star, which is what I have given The Last Samurai.
Oh.
And I try to like rate things objectively where there's all the technical aspects, and so I can sort of pull things. And I think this movie does well in spots that when we're talking about like Oscar nominations, art direction, costume design, sound mixing,
Yes.
it was up for all of those. I think it does all of those really well. I
Yeah.
think the cinematography by John Toll, who has a couple of Oscars to his name, is really strong. And I also really, really love it's got a Hans Zimmer score. It's not one of his more acclaimed scores, but I do think it builds nicely throughout the film. And once we get into the climactic third battle act, I think the score is a really strong presence in the movie. So there's a lot of things that I like on a technical side to this movie, as much as I don't love the writing, which I think is probably the most inferior part of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. That final battle sequence, Sarah, I was like, oh no, Sarah's probably hating all of this so much because this is not a Sarah movie, and that is definitely not a Sarah scene. But I think that's when I was like, this is where they spent their money. This is what they are spending. They're like doubling down, all chips in on this for their big splashy wow factor moment because that final battle sequence lasts so much longer. It's really two big ending sequences that they have put into this one movie. The first half and the second half are both so long and indulgent, and just the amount of production budget that I think they put into this, the indulgence and spectacle, they don't hold anything back on that front. I think all of that, I was like, this is why people go to the movies, to see stuff like this on this big screen, honestly. The horses, and I really love that there's kind of a pacing and a tonal shifting that's constantly happening throughout that final battle sequence. There's moments where we just get like the, clashing of things, but then there's kind of these slow, almost balletic sequences where the score slows down. It's a little bit in slower motion in the frame rates, and then we get kind of an explosion after that where we see characters exhibit more rage and more intensity and ferociousness than we've ever seen them. So I just love that there was kind of a multiple set of tones that were in this one battle sequence. I don't know. Sometimes in battle sequences in final movies, like there's just one tone the whole time, and by the end you're like, I'm exhausted and I'm tired and I'm sick of seeing people yelling, men yelling specifically at each other. And I love that we kind of are constantly on the edge of our feet of what tone are we going to hit next. And that's something that I think worked well in this film, is that final battle sequence. It's very long, but it doesn't feel as long as I think it actually is in reality.
There's definitely a point, and maybe it's just having consumed so many movies over a lifetime, and so many movies that are predominantly of this era where there's a long battle sequence. I'm thinking of like The Patriot, which is a similar era of this. And there are just these movies that build to a crescendo with these long battle sequences. And they're effectively like Marvel superhero movies where the final 40 minutes is a giant battle.
Yeah.
And there's something about these movies now, just there's a repetitious nature to them where I kind of get bored. And
Yes.
It's not that the battle sequences aren't well choreographed and orchestrated and shot majestically, but there's just like a sameness to most of them where I'm like, I've seen this before. I know what's going to happen. And again, it's just one of those, my eyelids start closing. They start glazing over. I'm like, I kind of keep drifting in and out. And if I had to pick a spot where I'd trim, this movie doesn't need to be 150 plus minutes. I think you could trim 5 to 10 from the battle sequence and I wouldn't hate it. So, but yeah, there's definitely spots to trim throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second half of the battle, I was like, why are we still battling, guys? Like, why isn't this over? Why aren't we done yet? Like, come on, let's move along. I have other things to do with my day. But the part of the battle that I really liked, because I'm not a battle scene person, I check out in Marvel movies in the last 40 minutes too, because I don't need this. But the part of the battle scene that I loved in this was when they retreat. And it's this strategic retreat. They're planning and plotting their next move. And I was like, oh, this is actually interesting. I want to watch this kind of like insurgency battle business going on. That is fascinating because it's strategic. It's not just a bunch of dudes with swords running into cannon fire. That's not interesting. I don't want to watch that. But this like plotting of like, okay, we understand the assets that we have. We understand the assets that they have. How can we get the advantage? It's like, this I can get behind. And then there was another like 30 minutes of battle. And I was like, okay, I'm done, guys. Let's go home.
I also couldn't help but draw a parallel to the movie we'll also be talking about in 2003, which is the Best Picture winner, which is Return of the King, which famously has multiple endings and epilogues, and it sort of keeps going. And this movie, it felt like there was 2 or 3 points where I'm like, this could have ended the movie just fine. And it just kind of kept going. And I was like, really? Here we go. Another scene? Like, I'm tired of taking notes at this point. Can we move a little faster?
And they spend time on things like the British, the translator who like walks away and has he gets a whole voiceover. And I'm like, I forgot that dude existed. And I forgot why he's in this movie. But like, you just have a British man telling you about how, I don't know, like he found peace. Okay. Why is this British man telling this story? One scene that I think is like the best screenwriting moment of this whole movie is when in the middle of the final right before that final battle, the Matsumoto's son is about to die, and he's essentially telling his father that he wants to sacrifice himself for the cause. And I love that Matsumoto doesn't say anything, but he says everything with his eyes that Ken Watanabe does. I loved that bit. I kept waiting for some really dramatic, cliched thing around like, I'm proud of you, or like, yes, like you are the ultimate samurai, or something, generic and cheesy. And I just love that he says nothing and just leaves, and they both have this mutual understanding of like the care, the love, feeling so proud of this choice, and the honor and the legacy he's leaving. I love that they didn't write anything. I love that it was silent and they left. I thought that was an incredible moment, and Ken Watanabe just this speaking 1,000 words with his eyes in that sequence. So that was the pinnacle of screenwriting gold. I think the best one in this whole movie. So I appreciated that so much.
And even though it was kind of on the nose a little bit after that, when Cruise's character goes to meet the Emperor and give the sword, I do like that he was like, remember how he lived, not how he died. Yeah. And that's at least an impactful line for me, where I'm like, that's kind of how I like live my day-to-day life, where I want people to eventually, when I pass on, be like, oh, Andrew was a this, that, and the other. This is what he did, like the good things. I don't want people to remember, whatever illness, took me out at the end, or whatever the case may be, like I want people to remember the good you put out in the world. And so I did like that sort of line at the end where I'm like, yes, okay, you do want to remember what the people did and how they lived and how they, how they moved people.
Mm-hmm. It's so good. It also works because the whole next point that the movie makes is around like remembering the culture. And I think that's also tied in with the remembering how he lived, but also like what their culture represented and how that should not be lost. So it kind of like works on the micro level and the macro level for what the film's trying to say. So that tied in really well. Yeah. Okay. Any other last big major things we want to make sure we wanted to get off our chest, air some grievances, or give some shout outs before we wrap?
I found it really interesting that this movie gives the plot of 300, which comes out just a few years later. And I forgot about that. I was like, oh, he's describing the plot of 300 right here in this movie. And then Zack Snyder goes and makes the movie a couple years later. That just kind of made me laugh a little bit.
Same, but different. Different flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I just want to shout out is the costume design is so good. And also, those pants that the samurai wear look so comfy. Where can I get me a pair of those big, flowy samurai pants? Because they look fashionable and they look really comfy. When like they're like doing all their stuff, I was just like, wow, you can really move in these. This sounds great. This can solve a lot of our problems, guys. We just need to get some samurai flowy pants. It might make us happy. I don't know. It's an option.
That's so good. Yeah, another little funny little moment that I loved that I'm like, that is so real, is when Tom Cruise comes like waltzing into Taka's home, and it's just like mud everywhere, and she just is like, oh my God, and has to like clean up behind him. And like anyone who's grown up in an Asian family knows that like you take your shoes off, there is the expected norm, and he just is like totally unaware and just tracking in so much mud in their beautiful, pristine Japanese home. So funny. All right. Well, I think we hit a good balance. We had some qualms that we made sure to hit on that we felt are really important. And then some things that did work well in this film that gives it a 3.5 from Andrew.
As much as I loved this discussion, I am happy that I will be able to put The Last Samurai, which is on the shelf behind me. It will go on my movie wall, and I may never pull it off again for the rest of my life. I think I've seen it enough for a lifetime, 5 times this year.
5 times is 4 times too many, so good job. You've done well. We will have to talk about it again in December, but it'll be in the mix of a lot of other things. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, this was a review and discussion of 2003, The Last Samurai. You can find it available to stream on a bunch of video on-demand platforms. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. A big thank you to you, Andrew, for joining and having this discussion with us. We're excited. Lots more to come of 2003 movies as we head into the winter.
We're getting close. We're like 8 or 10 weeks probably from recording. As I think about it, yeah, it's going to sneak up on us pretty quickly. How are you two doing on prep, if you don't mind me asking? Are you kind of like getting close to the end, or are you halfway? Where are you at?
We're probably somewhere in the middle there. I think we've got like still quite a few big ones on the list to hit. So not forming any like opinions yet on some of our picks. Just leaving that up to when we get a little bit closer. But yeah, some big ones that I still definitely...
Are you watching them in synchronization together, or are you going on your own journeys? Obviously, you're doing the episodes together.
Yeah. We have a list of, what is it, like 10 to 12, Sarah, that we make sure we want to like watch and probably review if we get a chance to in slots for the next like couple of weeks, and then a bunch that we'll just watch on our own, or we've already seen, or we need to revisit again and whatnot. So, but there's a list of 10 to 12 that are like, this would be interesting to review and discuss. Yeah. So I think we're about, how are we doing on that list? Like halfway through that list?
I think we're about halfway.
Yeah.
So that's not bad. So I think it's going to end up being like a cramming once we're closer. We had 11 on our list, and we have done 5 of the 11. So
okay. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. So it'll be real fresh in our minds for when we get to it for some of them. Yeah. I'm saving Return of the King. I think we want to watch that like closer too, because I think it's gonna be a lot. That's just a long movie too. Like we want to be fresh on that one.
I think of the 41 movies I watched, I penciled like 6 or 7 of them that need to come back out in the week or two before we record. That I need to. I'm always sort of like solidifying all of my stuff right at the end there. And there's a few I need to watch just one more time, even though I've seen many of them multiple times. I need to dig in a couple more.
Yeah. Bring it to the forefront of the brain. Yes. Find it from the file archives inside of our memories.
This was nice, though, because over the course of an episode on my show, obviously we're watching 30 or 40 movies sometimes. And in a 2.5-hour podcast, you can only talk about so much. And by the time we finish, you're like, wow, I can't believe I didn't talk about X, Y, and Z. And now I got the chance to talk about The Last Samurai. All I'll need to talk about The Last Samurai.
No, more than you ever thought or imagined or desired. But here we are. We did it.
But at least I got to do it with the two of you.
Yeah, it was fun. We had some fun takes in there. Andrew, where can people find more of you, your work, follow your content, connect with you on the interwebs? Well, you can find me at all podcast platforms at the Revisionist Almanac. You can, of course, find me on every social media platform using the handle Rev Almanac. And I'm going to drop a little surprise right now, which is, if you've managed to listen to me talk this long into the episode, if you're listening right now, send me a DM on any of the socials and say, I have listened to your episode, and you will receive this podcast sticker, and you will receive one of these Tom Cruise movies that I have here carefully selected, and that will be shipped out to you as a little present. So first one to DM me on any of the socials that's listening right now will get that little prize, and I'm very excited. Also, in addition to you two being on the show in a couple of months, next month, which would be August, on the 29th, you two were kind enough to be part of this giant Raiders of the Lost Ark collaboration project that I was putting together. I thought it was going to be like a single episode until I got 10 hours of contributions back, and so I decided I needed to break this out over the summer. And so you two will be kicking off part 3 of the collaboration on August 29th, so look out for that. Yay! Oh my gosh, that was so fun to get to record and contribute to. So that is awesome. Yeah, 10 hours is wild. That's some fun editing labor for you, but well done. You're doing a service. You're not far away. You're not far away with your collaborations you're doing. You're going to find out pretty quickly that they spiral out of control, and you start with 5 or 6, and then you end up with 10 and 12, and it's just going to grow larger and larger. But it's a positive. So enjoy all that you get. It's so fun. It's so fun. And everyone has such different takes too. We always describe it. It's like this kaleidoscope when you're like, oh, all these colors and textures of what people are like captivated by and why. And you just see their personalities come out too, which I think is really fun as well, of what they get interested in. All right, well, we include all of those things in our show notes. Go find Andrew on the internet, connect with him. We're big fans of Andrew out here. So yeah, go follow him and connect with a lot of amazing work and just really deep, thorough work. A lot of fun collab episodes too. And he's in a season of cooking up some good stuff, y'all. So be there for this era of Revisionist Almanac and all that Andrew Korn's bringing to the world. Our name, Movies Enough, sums it up. We're big fans of movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. Everyone is welcome here. We're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about The Last Samurai. Maybe when you watched it the first time versus now. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at moviesnestpod, or email us at moviesnestpod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on all things Movies and Us and our other podcasts, TV and Us. We will be back next week with actually a special episode. It is Movies and Us birthday. And if y'all know our birthday traditions, we reflect back on the year of the podcast and we do some picks. So we pick our favorite episode from the past year and our favorite moment from the past year on an episode. So stay tuned to see what we pick from the past year of podcasting. All right, we hope you have an amazing week and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.